Hello, everyone. Today, I would like to talk about hunting for remote serious services, and we will speak about the main tools and the ways to detect them in the corporate infrastructure. Just about myself, a little bit. Head of use case management in GK Innotech. That's a part of T1 Innotech. I have about 10 years of experience analyzing threat hunting and analyzing CM system content, and including detecting projects. Why should we care about remote services? This technique is very useful. For example, first, that in our company, we have a certain landscape of cyber threats, and this is one of them. If you represent financial sector, it will be very relevant to you. And this technique is very useful for the companies which has any infrastructure in their corporate structure. Next point is that it's in the horizontal shift areas. It has only 9 techniques, and meter, ATT, and CK plays an important role there. So, meter detecting is higher. That's the main parameter, the frequency of occurring of this technique in TI reports. We continuously analyze the reports by TI, which are publicly available, and based on these, we analyze the systems. So it's present here too. Another point is that since the mid-2021, not a single update was able to go without the improved metrics. And the same happened a few months ago. We had a new technique here for cloud services. In general, since the end of 2021, we've continuously seen how remote services being used by different criminals and different fraudulent activities, irresponsible and irreversible of the scale of the attack. A number of tools were selected, which are used by potential criminals. And here we can see some very heavy frameworks which require pre-installation in the infrastructure, as well as some native Windows utilities and tools which you already have. And it's much harder to detect them clearly. So it's a very complicated graph here. Since we analyzed this technique and we had a lot of hunts, and we cannot cover it in 15 minutes, that's why I decided to share this graph. You can analyze it yourself, this correlation rates, and detecting it in the infrastructure. And we will consider the most important, the most relevant. So how do we detect? Since there is a set which will be installed on every machine which will guarantee your security, clearly we will focus on the Windows XP, Windows events which are enough to detect this when we have horizontal attacks. It's a set of artifacts which you would have to collect, and here we have the parameters when configure audit settings. Next, we will consider the main methods, the main techniques used by the potential criminals, and we will start with RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. We will start with RDP because it's the most widespread approach. If we take a look at the technique, you can find it in basically 50% of TI reports, or maybe even more, because it's easy, because it's cheap, no attention attracted. You could use AHP,
нужна для детектирования, потому что
but you need
некоторые
activation.
злоумышленники, бывает, отключают RDP. Это кажется
And
странным, но
some
есть примеры, например,
potential criminals disable RDP,
Viper,
which might sound counterintuitive,
ну, он выдавал
but
себя за шифровальщик, хотя
there
при
was some
этом он не
criminal
шифровал
who
данные, а удалял их. И вот также он
was
отключал
deleting
протокол
data.
RDP,
They did
видимо, чтобы
not
как-то
encrypt
замедлить
data, they was deleting
сгенерирование.
data,
Но это мы
and
можем только
they
предполагать.
disabled
Стоит
RDP,
обратить внимание
maybe
на
to prolong
многообразие
the period of
способов
time before they were found out.
включения
We can also take
RDP
a look
и
at
выполнения
the
других настроек, которые
difference in the
помогают
approaches,
злоумышленникам продвигаться по сети. Это могут
how
быть
they
как
can
командлеты PowerShell,
go on this
команды из BAT-файлов,
network.
изменения
It can be from
реестра. Все это
PowerShell,
необходимо
it
отслеживать.
can be for remote
Не всегда
desktop. All
бывает
this has to be
удобным
tracked.
создавать новую сессию,
It's not
подключаться к
usually
ней. Иногда
easy
легче
to
подключиться
recreate a
к
new
уже
session.
имеющейся
Maybe it's
сессии,
easier to
так
join
называемый
an
перехват
existing
сессии.
session.
Существует
And the
также
so-called
множество способов
session
перехватить сессию.
hijacking.
Мы рассмотрим
There are
3 из
multiple
них.
ways to hijack a session.
Первое —
We'll
это так
consider three of
называемое
them.
теневое
First
подключение.
is the
Встроенный
so-called
клиент
shadow
RDP,
hijacking, shadow connection.
MSTC,
The
имеет опцию теневого
pre-installed
подключения, которое позволяет без оповещения
mstc.exe
пользователя не
can
только
do it without
наблюдать за
notifying the
сессией, но и
user,
контролировать его.
both
Флаги, которые необходимы для этого,
monitor
здесь
and
указаны.
control the session of a user.
При этом
And here on the
на
screen you see
атакуемой
what
стороне
is
в журнале
needed,
Remote
what has
Services
to be
у нас
installed.
генерируются события, говорящие
And the events are
успешном
generated,
подключении,
which
теневом подключении.
describe successful shadow hijacking.
Следующий вариант перехвата сессии —
The
это с
next way
помощью
to hijack a
native
session
utility TS-Code.
is to use native utility
На вход ей надо
TS-Code.
подать
For
destination
input, it has
host
to
и
receive
параметры
destination
сессии.
host and the parameters of the session.
На атакуемом хосте также
For the
зарегистрируется
attacked
событие
host,
повторного
the event will be
подключения
registered
к
of the reconnection to
Ну, если
the
те же самые
session.
функции TS-Code
And
теперь
the same
доступны
applies
и
to the
в
third
фреймворках, в сторонних фреймворках, таких как Mimikatz.
to
Это бывает еще
third-party
более
frameworks
удобно,
like
потому что мы можем
Mimikatz,
осуществить не
and it can
только
be even easier
подключение,
because
но и
we can
повышение
have
привилегий
the
из одного.
session hijacking and we can also increase the privilege from the same
Не
framework.
менее интересным и не менее
Another
распространенным
interesting
является
point and
использование
another
злоумышленниками
widespread
протокола SMB.
approach is to
SMB,
use
в принципе,
SMB protocol.
позволяет
SMB
осуществлять
allows
доступ к общим
to
сетевым
have
ресурсам
access
и
to
файлам на
general
них,
network
администраторам,
resources,
но он
to
зачастую
files, to
используется
administrators, but
злоумышленниками,
usually it's used by
особенно
potential criminals,
операторами
especially by
программ-вспомогателей, потому что
operators
нет
from
ничего более
ransomware,
удобного, чем
because
подключить
it's
всем
really
DSC
easy to
и
use
пошифровать все с
to
одного хоста.
connect to the
Соответственно, необходимо
local disk C
отслеживать
and
события
encrypt it from a single host.
маппинга
So you would
SHA
have to
с использованием
track
как
mapping shares,
PowerShell скриптов, так и нативных
both using
программных
PowerShell
лет.
scripts and net native tools.
SMB, в принципе, используется
SMB is actually
для
used
различных методов
for
атак.
different attack
Злоумышленники могут
techniques.
записывать туда
Potential
результаты
criminals can
выводов
record
команд
the
разведки,
results
которые они обычно
of
выполняют
their
после того, как они получили
reconnaissance,
изначальный доступ.
which
Они осуществили разведку хостов и затем
after they had the reconnaissance of hosts, and then they will store the data, and then they will move horizontally.
Также файлы могут
And it can be used to launch services. They can also be used to get access to SMB shares. And now we will move to remote execution.
Соответственно, через VMI также доступно
One could use WMI to perform remote command execution. There is a parameter node. You input necessary information as well as authentication parameters for the user which you would like to use to log in. And these processes should be taken into account when we're speaking about remote execution. Next point is PowerShell remoting. PowerShell also has a function to do remotely. First, you have to enable it. First, you have to track the activation.
При этом, если команда вызывается с явно указанными данными аутентификации, создается соответствующее событие в выполнении входа в систему с явно указанными учетными данными.
So the next point
Ну и просто надо обращать внимание на то, что на такой
is that we have to pay attention that this host generates a lot of information that we can use and see that there is an ongoing attack. For example, it could be logon type 3. Next point is DCOM.
Протокол, который является расширением
DCOM is an extension for COM protocol, and COM is a base technology for Windows. For COM objects, which are present in Windows, it's very useful for potential criminals. Here we provide an example where Microsoft Management Console is used. A potential criminal would get into the infrastructure, and it was the working environment of some administrator or a DevOps who used Microsoft Management. And why would they develop something new? They can use this console to move around the network. They can use different commands. They can create instance COM objects. They can refer to this object via execute shell command, and they can call upon, they can return any binary file. Sometimes it's not very useful to create a COM object and then refer to it. You can do it by using one command, and with Microsoft Management Console, one should track different processes which are run by this console. If we take a look at CMD or PowerShell, then it's suspicious. And I would like to cover VN protocols, which also provides connection. First, I would like to mention that to mitigate potential attacks is to monitor outgoing connection. It's better to prohibit them, but if for whatever reason you cannot prohibit them, you have to at least monitor them. Next point is to provide profile administrator activity. It's connected with the third recommendation, is to limit the number of used clients for the network connection for SSH, so that it will not be very chaotic in the infrastructure. Then it will be very hard for you to detect and maintain. So you can either block them for launches, or you at least have to monitor them. And finally, final advice to correlate and monitor for any suspicious activity after remote connection.
Это все. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you for your attention. That's all I have for the presentation.